Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching us from. This is Global Harvest Church, United Kingdom, and you are in our Revealed Truth session, our Bible study session that we call the Revealed Truth. Today, we'll be talking about um, mastery of the workplace and communicating our value in the workplace. We trust God to shed his lights into our hearts and teach us by himself, even for our speaker today. Before we go, can we just take a short word of prayers and we dive right into it? Heavenly Father, we thank you. Thank you for your word. Thank you for always sending us your word. We thank you because the entrance of your word brings light and understanding to the simple. Lord, we are simple enough to receive of you this evening. We ask, sweet Holy Spirit, that you teach us by yourself in the name of Jesus. As we have gathered in your name, we ask, oh God, that you journey with us, you fellowship with us, and your spirit will teach us, even through your speaker, Lord. You will send your word and you will reveal yourself to us. You will break every form of ignorance, every form of darkness in our lives. Yes, your word says, let our light so shine before men that they might see our good deeds and glorify you, our Father in heaven. We ask, oh God, even with this teaching tonight, men will see the light of you in us in the name of Jesus. And at the end of the session, Lord, you'll take us a higher level of knowledge in the name of Jesus. And indeed, men will know that we have knowledge and we're applying this knowledge that we have. For in Jesus' precious name we've prayed. Amen. Good evening once again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is Global Harvest Church, United Kingdom. You are in our Revealed Truth session, and today we'll be talking about communicating our values in the workplace. And we have our speaker, Lady Joy, Joy Adeyemi, our very own Lady Joy. We call her Lady Joy LJ. And I would like to quickly read her profile for those that may not know her, in case you are joining us for the first time or for some reason you've not had a reason to listen to her speak to us. I'll just read her profile very quickly so you will know how much depth that will be coming by the help of the Holy Spirit through her tonight. Um, I'll take that in 1 minute. Okay. All right. So Joy is an experienced senior HR professional with a background covering diverse industries. Having occupied several strategic HR positions on a global scale, she currently serves as the head of HR for a global organization in the United Kingdom. In her role, she manages the HR advisory function, overseeing a team of 18 individuals across the UK. Joy holds a deep passion for empowering individuals with the necessary skills to excel in the workplace. Additionally, she has a strong interest in innovation and its transformative impact on enhancing employee experience at work. So why not Joy? Okay, with that being said, and with so much expectation, I will encourage us, appeal to us to please take a notepad, take a writing material, and get ready to take notes because God will be sending us his word through his servants and his daughter this evening. And please, to take Jesus Joy, help me welcome our very own Joy Adeyemi, who we call it the Joy in the house. Okay, over to you, LJ. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you. Whenever my profile is being read, I'm like sometimes cringing, but that's one of the things I wanted to talk about today as well, is just accepting compliments and just owning your experience and all of that. So thank you everyone for joining. So if we could take the time to kind of share this video, it's live on YouTube and, just share on your WhatsApp profiles and all of that so that people will join because it's going to be really, really packed 1 hour with everybody. But thank you all so much for joining. Right. I really, really like a very interactive class. And I typically don't like to do PowerPoint presentations because sometimes I feel that people get a bit distracted looking at the slides. But today I'm taking a slightly different approach. So I've got a slide deck which we can share after the call. So if you leave your email addresses in the chat, but also, I want it to be a very, very engaging class. So I would start. Let me just share my screen so that you can all hopefully see. Right, so let me know if you can all see my screen. I believe you should be able to see my screen. Okay.
Yes, we
So it
can.
just means I'll be flipping back and forth the screens because I'm not able to see the chat and all of that, but let's go. So the first thing that I wanted to ask is how important or do we think that communication and being able to be an effective communicator is
Oh,
in
but
the
this is what you
workplace.
need to do, is communicate your value at work.
Yes, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being it is so super important, and 1 being, well, it's not so important. Use the chat and just let us know, how important do you think effective communication is in the workplace? Let's see, use the chat. Okay, it's a 10. Most people are, so Modipe Antinu says 10. Sheba says 10. I think it's a 10. And in fact, if there's anything higher than a 10, okay, exactly. Olade says 10. Absolutely. So being an effective communicator I wouldn't dare say it's the most powerful thing, because I'm sure there are other variables that makes you very successful at work. But it is one of the most powerful things. And in fact, I was reading, and I always read the World.
Watch this whole thing, actually.
I always read the World Economic Forum just to kind of see, they do a skills audit or kind of, research, just to collect information to check what employers are looking for, even up to, and they have a report of up to 2030. One of the things that they list as the top 5 skills is something around social influencing and leadership. And even though they are not pointing to communication, I believe that for you to have social impact or to be influential on a social scale and also leadership, you definitely require great communication to be able to do that. And that's why it is really important. So all of the answers that we've got there is absolutely spot on. Before we start, let's take this question. So can you share some feedback, if you're feeling bold enough to do that, of some of the, share some feedback you received about your communication at work, whether it was good or it was not so good, whatever it is. I will share mine whilst I'm waiting for people to share in the chat. So one of the feedback that I got about myself, and I've got people that I have worked with in the past, so I've got Cheze, on the call. One of the feedback that I have got so far is, in fact, not so far, consistently, is that I speak really fast. So I've got that feedback. And in fact, one of my, about 8 years ago, I was senior HR manager for a very small not-for-profit organization. And I remember doing that interview with the chief operations officer. And she said to me, "Oh gosh, Joy, you speak so fast. I'm going to make an offer to you because I also speak fast. And it will be nice to see how we do competition and who speaks the fastest." Now, why that sounds like, a story that ended quite positively, because I ended up getting an offer in the end. I have also had situations where I was giving feedback to say, I didn't get the role. And although the main reason was not because I was speaking so fast, one of the reasons was certainly, try to, be more paced when you're speaking. And in fact, I had an interview with the BBC. I was interviewing. I wasn't going to take the offer if they had offered me. I thought, I just wanted to, the HR director, and I said, although I'm not taking this role and I want to kind of be excluded from the process, I would like some feedback. And her feedback, word for word, was, "You're clearly a very intelligent and fast thinker, but try to pace your conversation when you're speaking." And so over the years, taking those feedback, and in fact, my last story about that is, I was recently doing a presentation at work and, using Teams and all of that. And, with Teams, there's been a lot of updates with Teams, and the AI is quite advanced right now. And so as I was doing the presentation, so Teams will typically give you prompts and kind of tell you different things, like, maybe clean your camera and all of those sorts of things. The feedback that Teams gave me when I was doing this presentation was, try to slow down. And I think that was the point that it clocked to me that I clearly speak so fast if AI is trying to catch up with me. And so as I'm speaking at this very moment, I'm trying to pace my conversations, because I found and I discovered, and it's something that I quite encourage people to do, that when you are very, or you become self-aware in terms of how you are being perceived or how your communication and all of that is coming through to your audience, it's important that you do a lot of self-reflection. And having got that interview a lot of times, I realized that there are 2 times when I speak really fast. One, when I'm very excited, or 2, when I'm very nervous. And it's so challenging, because I typically fall within these 2 realms literally most of the time in my life, right? So I have to be very conscious that when I'm trying to get some leverage, or when I'm trying to get some kind of action, whether that is through communicating at work, presenting, or interviewing, and whatever it is, I really pace myself, okay? So that's just my own feedback. Somebody says, okay, right. So can everybody hear me? My internet is a bit shaky today, so I'm hoping that it works. But
yes, we can hear you now. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so okay. So nobody put anything in the comments around a feedback that they had received in the past. Okay, so maybe everybody's just a great communicator. So this is going to be a great class. Let's continue. Okay, so if you can use the chat to just share maybe some feedback that you have got regarding how you were communicating at work. I think it's really important sometimes to reflect on the feedback that you've got and see how you can improve. Right, moving on. What is the cost of poor communication? So someone, Adora says, I haven't gotten feedback because I haven't asked. Fantastic. And I like your vulnerability and authenticity. Because sometimes we don't ask, so we don't get. And I think it's really important, even though sometimes the feedback may not be what we like, it's really important to always ask. So what are the costs of poor communication? Like I shared, unsuccessful interviews, you may not get a role because you just didn't articulate what you were bringing to the proverbial table. It could be that you poorly negotiate your job offer or job offers because you just, aren't that good in kind of communicating what you want. There is also the factor around a lack or poor visibility at work, because if you're not a very strong communicator, then you are likely not to put yourself forward. You're likely not to, to share your views and ideas at work. There is also potential of lacking progression or promotion in the workplace, because all of these things require some form of exchange of communication in the workplace, whether that is presenting your ideas, making a business case, or even advocating for yourself in the workplace. Potentially disciplinaries and grievances. I remember recently somebody, a friend of mine, had got into some problem at work around something to do with, conflict of interest. And, they reached out to me and said, look, I'm kind of having this challenge and I don't think I've done anything wrong, but, I've been taken to a disciplinary process, or through a disciplinary process. What do you think I should do? And one of the things I said, first of all, you need to understand the organization's policy around, that kind of thing. And, they went through it very, very deeply. And at the end of the day, they put a very, very strong case through why they shouldn't be taking through that process, because, and it was through just interpreting and presenting a very solid case as to why they hadn't breached the organization's conflict of interest policy. So, and I was very, very impressed around just their ability to understand the policy, but more than understanding the policy, being able to present a case and, challenging the investigation manager. And, at the end of the day, there was no case to answer. And that, for some other people, I've seen cases where disciplinaries and grievances just break down completely because they are not able to communicate. There's also a potential perceived poor performance if you're not able to communicate very well. So most of all of us on this call do some work that we have to communicate with people. We have to communicate with our manager. We have to, and all of that. So sometimes you find people that are poor communicators at work, being challenged and say, well, we don't think that you're performing. And it's not necessarily that they're not performing, but because they are not able to communicate the value that they are bringing and the impact that their work has, then, they may be then put on performance, maybe like a performance improvement plan. And then I think there's just the generic being disengaged from the workplace, because the impact or sometimes the the outcome of some of, being, having all of these things that we've talked about, poor negotiation, being rejected in job interviews, having poor performance, receiving negative feedback, and all of those sorts of things could just lead to disengagement generally. And you see people are not happy and, disengage and, start looking for work. So I can see a lot of things in the chat, right? It says it's getting feedback. Okay. So Olaide says, okay, wrong perception, right? Right, wrong perception of your personality. Absolutely. Yes, that's true. That's true. So Abby says, very formal in my email. So Abby, I don't know what Abby, are you saying that you've received feedback saying you're too formal in your emails? Okay. And I've also seen people that are very informal, and, we're working in a multi-generational workforce where you have Gen Zs with baby boomers and all of those people, and millennials working at the same time, and the culture and the way that we communicate is very different. And sometimes when I see some people's out of office, I'm like, oh my gosh, whilst I like it and it's very funny, I don't know if I could do it. But again, that's just me. So Kay says, I was told I can come across intimidating about things I am knowledgeable about. I was advised to be cautious, not to appear that way when talking to people who aren't as confident. Fantastic, feedback. And thanks, Kay, for sharing that. And I'm going to cover things around our personalities and how they potentially impact how we're communicating in the workplace. Really, really good feedback. So what are some of the things that cause poor communication at work? I think, as Kay has said, there is a huge personality challenge there. It's just the way that we are, right? The way that we're wired. So some people are quite loud and quite bold in the way that they communicate. Some people are more introverted. Some people are extroverted. Some people are, somewhere in the middle, ambiverts. I guess that's what they call them. Some people are quite shy. Some people are, sometimes it could just be inexperience because you just don't know. And, what you don't know sometimes is not an excuse. But I've found people are just not experienced. And communication, for example, is one of those things that we don't tend to develop ourselves in, because, you just get on with life and you don't realize that actually some people go to school to learn how to communicate. Sometimes it's a lack of confidence. It could be culture as well. And I know that on this call, we've got diverse cultures, but sometimes culture. So for example, my culture is kind of African and Nigerian. And with the African culture, I was, brought up to, not look into people's eyes and, be very respectful, and you can't call people by their names. And so contrast that with the culture in the West, where you're calling your CEO by his name or her name, and it's like, really strange and you feel uncomfortable. Excuse me, we're not brought up to challenge, and so you don't want to challenge people because that's the culture. And sometimes the perception of such display could be seen as, this person is poor in communicating. And again, it could impact and have a knock-on effect on getting a job and getting promotions and all of those sorts of things. Sometimes past experience or feedback, especially when it's negative, tend to impact on our communication. Trauma, I have put trauma because whether you believe it or not, I've seen a lot of people that because of trauma, they just freeze when they are communicating. And another thing I would say impacts, again, which is slightly linked to trauma, but it's not trauma, it's neurodiversity. So in the workplace, we've got a lot of people these days, and in fact, there's research that shows that in the next decade, neurodiverse conditions like ADHD, all of those things would be quite common in the workplace. And sometimes the impact of that is just how they are communicating. A lack of self-belief, when people just don't believe in themselves, believe in their work. Negative emotions could be fear and anxiety. I talked about that. I quite speak fast when I'm anxious or when I'm excited or happy. So again, I've got those two emotions sort of conflicting and working. A lack of self-awareness, I have also found, and lots of research again that sort of validate this, that people communicate because they're not just aware of how they're coming across. And a lack of preparation. So I've seen this, haven't been in a lot of interview panels. You just realize this person clearly did not prepare for this, and therefore the way that they communicated then impacted. Okay. And I'm sure you have lots of other examples as to why, you feel that, poor communication, and maybe do a bit of reflection on your own personal communication style and just put in the chat as to why you think poor communication. Okay. So let's talk about some myths or not myths. So I've got 3 things here that I've heard a lot of people talk about, in terms of, is this real or not? Does this impact? So the first one, it's a question. So use the chat to put your answer or your reflection or thoughts. So the first one is, your accent is a problem and therefore you need to get a course on elocution. So elocution is kind of the way that you speak to enhance your accent. So for example, I am Nigerian first before I'm British. So, I am never changing my accent because that is who I am. So do you believe that this is just a myth, or do you think it's a big issue? Let's talk about it on the chat. I really want people to engage on this particular one because I've heard a lot of feedback from people where they say, yeah. So, yeah, so 2 people are saying it's a myth. Yeah, it's a myth. I agree. Yeah, so 50-50, Olaide thinks it's 50-50. Okay. I tend to think that it's a myth because I have seen a lot of people who have got very heavy accents, and I'm talking, I've worked with people from, Chinese, kind of Asian people. I've worked with people from India, and they have got really, really heavy accents, and they do absolutely amazingly well in the workplace. No issues, accent not changing, and all of those sorts of things. And in fact, one of my some of the few people that I go to is, I remember Ajay Banga. I think Ajay Banga was the CEO of MasterCard at some point. I don't know whether he is still the CEO of MasterCard, but Ajay Banga was CEO of MasterCard. As far as I remember, Ajay Banga, he used to have his hats, the sort of the traditional, I think it was religious sort of hat. And, he would wear his, his traditional regalia. And he was the CEO of one of the world's most successful sort of financial, organizations. And so he never changed his accent. Another one that I look at is Indra Nooyi. So Indra Nooyi used to be the chairman and CEO of PepsiCo as well. So again, I've heard her speak in lots and lots of events, and her accent, absolutely no difference. And that's how she spoke. So again, these are just few people from a career workplace point of view. And I mean, we can go into footballers and we can go into all of those ones, but then there's an argument that those people is kind of more discussed because you're not communicating, right? So let's focus on the workplace. I've mentioned 2 people. I'm sure you know other people from other countries with very heavy accent that are doing amazing work, and their accent is not a problem. Now, it doesn't mean that, you shouldn't do elocution, take courses on elocution. I think absolutely you could do that if you feel that it's going to enhance how you, work. But personally, I didn't find it to be an issue for me. One of the things that I would say is it's always good to kind of brush up on how you maybe pronounce things. So again, where I'm coming from, from Nigeria, I had a completely different way of, pronouncing some words. I still struggle with 3 or 3, like I still struggle with that. And sometimes I catch myself saying 3 and I'm like, shoot, it's not 3, it's 3, right? So there's all of those sorts of things that I still struggle with, but I think, it's forgivable, especially when you can, balance that with delivering exceptionally well. So I would say, and agree with the majority of the group, that it is a myth. Let's go to the second one. It is the way I am, I cannot change. Do we agree that you can't change because that's just where you are, personality, I'm just a loud person? What do we think? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I agree, because I think that everybody can change, everybody can improve, everybody can adapt. Everybody can adapt. So you're all right. Everybody can adapt. And I have seen myself over time improve. The way I communicate now is completely different from how I used to communicate 10 years ago and all of that. And that has taken very conscious and intentional efforts to sort of improve how I am communicating. And then the third myth is, I'm very experienced in my field and the type of work I do does not really require much communication, so I can't be bothered with this one. What do we think? I hear a lot of people that are in single contributor roles, people that are maybe in tech, tend to say, I'm just behind my computer, I don't lead teams and all of that, therefore I shouldn't bother. Again, it's a myth. Yes, absolutely. I think, and in fact, it's expedient that we do improve ourselves. Like I talked about the World Economic Forum, I think it's number 5, and it keeps changing all the time. Leadership and social influencing is a big thing, and therefore it's important that we learn. And what makes that quite effective is your ability to communicate, whether it's virtually, whether it's online, or whether it's physically. It's really important that we are able to do that. Okay, so what are some of my observations? I wanted to keep this class as real as possible. And so I'm going to share some of the self-sabotaging beliefs or limiting beliefs that I have seen, or behaviors rather, that I have seen in the workplace. So if any of these resonate with you, or you have other kind of self-sabotaging or limiting behaviors that you have found caught even in yourself or other people, please let us know. So the first one is being too comfortable in your preferred personality. So I'm talking, introversion or extroversion. When you're too comfortable in that and you feel, I can't change, this is who I am, those are quite limiting behaviors that impact on your ability to communicate, effectively. So, we heard Kay, for example, gave her example or the feedback she received as to how she's coming across in meetings and, potentially making other people feel uncomfortable. I don't think that that's a negative feedback. I think I love her bravery to be able to show up in meetings and, or in group calls and be able to talk about herself. And I think there's probably just some work there to do around how do I do this much more effectively? And then also bearing in mind that there are other people and, be mindful of things around inclusivity and all of that. So one of the self-sabotaging things is that this is the way I am. And I've heard a lot of people talk about it. I've seen senior leaders lose their jobs because at the end of the day, the organization just can't afford to put other people at risk or put their reputation at risk because they have a manager who does not just know how to communicate because of their personality. So I think we can all agree that in the workplace, you find you're working with some personalities that does impact on you, and the way that they communicate is just affecting your work. So if you have all of that, I think it's important that you think about it. And some of the introversion is that people are just quiet. Another thing that I have seen that impacts on people's effectiveness at work is just feeling uncomfortable around selling themselves or advocating for themselves. This is something that I personally used to suffer from. I was that kind of girl that I was doing fantastic work, but I wouldn't bother too much about sharing the work that I was doing in the organization. I was very good at presenting myself externally if I had to do presentations or if I was interviewing, but the work I was doing within organizations, I was just very quiet about it. And so I would do really, really great work. But when there's an opportunity to talk about what I have done, I just wouldn't do it. So again, it's important that you are comfortable with selling or advocating for yourself and communicating the value that you bring, because what that does is it puts you in the right audience, hopefully, if you're very strategic about who you're communicating with, and it forces you to really think of the value that you're doing. So that's the beauty about communication, because before you get to the point that you're actually talking about things, you're preparing, and so you're articulating how you're bringing value to the business, and then you're presenting, and the more that you do it, the better you become at things like that. This one I have put it here because it's very, very close to my heart. And I've got past colleagues working with me. So Cheze is on the call and Ibukun is on the call. When we work together in an organization, I always have my camera on because I just think that it's one of the most powerful things in a virtual world that you can use to show your visibility, having your cameras on. And trust me, organizations, excuse me, pay attention to these things in the workplace. So it's important a lot of people say, oh, I can't be bothered. I don't want to turn my camera on, meetings, sometimes people are not dressed ready and all of that. And so you are not able to show up in the most powerful way that you can show up in the workplace. So I always advise people, to do that. So again, this is another self-sabotaging thing. People are not just prepared, and all of that. And so people never turn their cameras on. Another one that I have noticed is self-depreciation or downplaying your achievements or accomplishments, including compliments in the workplace. So this is a really, really big one. People just downplay the skills and things that they bring to work. So I've seen example of, oh, this, people finish a meeting and they say, oh, that was really, really good meeting. Tinu, thank you so much. And Tinu says, oh, really? Oh, thank you. I really didn't do much. And, they just downplay it. Or really, I didn't think it was great. And all of that. So I've heard people, gosh, countless times do that and put, the self, kind of that depreciating the value or downplaying the value of what they bring in the workplace. So I'm going to give you an example of how, because again, with all of these things, I need to put an example of what you can do to improve on that. So one of the things that you can do around self-depreciation, if you're that type of person that don't like to, you kind of feel shy, or you don't like, or you're feeling, you don't want to feel like you're too proud or too arrogant, is just a simple thank you is good enough. Just start by just saying, oh, thank you. And, that is all that you need in that. Now, I will take it a step further because I'm that kind of person. I will say, thank you so much, or I really put a lot of effort in that. So it means so much to me that it was noticed. Oh, yes, I do that at work on a daily basis. When I get my, when I get a kind of compliment on a work that I have done, I receive the feedback, as in Nigeria, we would say, with my full chest. I receive it and I'm like, thank you so much. Really means a lot to me. I put a lot of effort in delivering that deck or whatever that presentation is, because I actually did. So, and even if you didn't, make it look like you put an effort in the work that you did. One of the things that I have found is that being a confident communicator goes a long way in helping you communicate value. I have seen people at work do something so small, and the way that they sell that piece of work, you'll be wondering, is this the same piece of work that I worked on? It's so beautiful to kind of see, rather than be one of the people that goes and be really upset and say, they didn't even do much, it's not adding value on all of that. Why don't we learn from those people and say, actually, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell myself. I'm going to do that and be a self-advocate. So that's another thing that I have seen. So again, here, people don't, I think I've repeated that twice to say, people just don't feel comfortable selling themselves. I think we need to get comfortable with selling or advocating, if you don't like the word sell, advocating and presenting your value and your ideas in the most authentic ways. And it starts from just really knowing that everything you do brings value, especially if you've invested in yourself, if you've invested time, is bringing value to the workplace. So why can't you just say it? Say it and sell it to the people in the most authentic way and all of that. Another one that I've seen, and this is a big one, is prefacing your conversation or prefacing your conversation or ideas with one of those doubt-filled statements. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard this or can relate. Have you heard, so use the chat box, have you heard people put their hands up in meeting and the first thing they say is, oh, sorry, I know this is a stupid question, please, and then they go ahead and ask their question. How many people have heard that before? Yeah, it's a stupid question. Why did you assume it's a stupid question? Why, like, who asked you? So people start with that, oh, it's a stupid question and all of that. And that is one of the worst things that you can do in the workplace. In fact, in any meeting at all. It's a stupid question. I don't know if somebody has asked it before. It doesn't matter if someone has asked it before. Ask it again afresh and let the presenter or the facilitator say, oh, someone else has asked that question, the answer is X, rather than prefacing with, those negative ideas. I'm going to share a quick story because I'm a bit of a storyteller, so bear with me. I remember doing an event and I was helping out in a kind of career masterclass event, and I was the one sort of facilitating the CV review. And so I was sitting in a room where people would walk in one at a time, and I would kind of have like a 5-minute CV review session with them and, give them advice, have a quick review of their CV and all of that, and then give them advice on how they can improve. And now the walk from the door to where I was sitting was something like, I don't know, maybe 6 feet, potentially more, thereabouts. And there was a lady who walked into the room And as she was about maybe 15 thereabout steps towards where I was, she says, oh, hi, I'm a very shy person. I'm really, really, really shy. And I said, oh, yes, I mean, I saw it from afar. I knew you're very, very shy. I didn't know she was shy. Why did she tell me? Why did she put that self-doubt statement right in front of me, assuming I was a potential hiring manager or an organization? I can tell you that that already set her on a negative, part with me, because I don't want to employ somebody who is shy, and not just somebody who is shy, somebody who actually acknowledges and puts that as their first statement that they're a shy person. I want a strong, a bold, confident person in the workplace. So again, I've seen a lot of this where people start with that negative, I'm shy, oh, I did this, I don't. Or sometimes people are trying to break the ice. Don't try to use negative things. Use what everybody is comfortable with. Talk about the weather. I know it's boring. We talk about it all the time. Make yours very, very interesting. Talk about the weather. Don't talk about negative things. Put those negative statements. I know it's a stupid question. Oh, I know we don't care if it's a stupid, dumb question. If it's a stupid question, you shouldn't be asking a stupid question. And if you want to ask a stupid question, guess what? Don't say it is a stupid question. Just ask your question. And that makes you very, very bold and confident. Okay. Good. Does anybody, right? So Ibukun says, I think underreporting or lack of adequate report of work done can be self-sabotage. Absolutely. Underreporting. Yes, absolutely. And I've seen that a lot, where people you do this much and you say, actually, is this, I did this much. Sell your work and blow it up. I think one of the classes that we did, I gave an example about 3 bricklayers who, and I think it's kind of a, it's one of those stories. And in the story, they shared kind of a fiction, I believe. These 3 people were building a huge cathedral, and somebody came and asked the first bricklayer, oh, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm just laying stones for this building and all of that. And the second one, they asked him, he said, oh, yeah, I'm just laying stones for, to build this huge building and all of that. And the third one, when they were asked him, what are you doing? He says, I am laying stones that holds the foundation for the largest cathedral in the world that will host thousands and thousands of people during tourism for many years to come. Who are you likely to listen to employ, to promote, to give a salary review? Of course, the third, underselling the work that you're doing, or I think there is a fine balance between underselling and exaggerating, but I would rather err on the side of exaggerated work than underselling. Like, you're far better off saying, oh, Joy just exaggerates than she undersells, and all of that. So using this analogy, and I think it's quite online, so look for maybe the 3 bricklayers selling themselves or something like that. It's actually a very, very powerful analogy as to how 3 people doing exactly the same work, but the way that they perceive and see what they're doing is very different. And their outcomes and even their attitude to the work, of course, will be very different as well. Okay, good. So another thing around communication, let me just quickly add this is, so Alaide says, can I say a line like this in a meeting or interview? I talk fast. Feel free to slow me down if I'm moving too fast. Do you know what? This is actually very, very interesting, Olaide, that you put this. And I've seen this happen a lot. Here is what I would say. I would say that you don't even make that statement at all. Because here are the things about, prefacing your conversations with the negative, or those things where you're trying to say, oh, I just want to be honest. What it does is that you have alerted your audience to that part of you. And trust me, human nature would always look for an opportunity to remind you of the thing that you're trying to avoid. That's how I see it. Every time you do this, if you try it, people will be listening to you to see the part that you're fast. And even when you're not fast, because you said it and they missed a point you wrote, they will say, oh, that's true, because she said she's fast, do that. So I would say, so what I would do is I would work on my pacing rather than try to use that to say, this. So let's take personal responsibility and accountability and say, I talk quite fast. So what I'm going to do is pace myself. And every single time, consciously, that I find myself pacing, and I'm going to talk about pacing towards the end, then you catch yourself out and you stop yourself doing that. And trust me, if you are speaking very fast and the audience is engaging with you, without you telling them, they would ask you. They will say, oh, could you slow down a bit? Or could you repeat what you've just said? You were quite fast. And then that is your cue to be conscious rather than putting it out there. So I would say, hold a lot of things. Again, in the workplace, we don't want to be sharing too much, right, about our perceived weaknesses or struggles. So I would say, hold a lot of things, right, and give just what is needed in the workplace rather than, trying to be open and share all of that. Okay, that's how I would handle it. Okay, right. So communication, right, is a skill and can be learned. Communication, like any other skill, can be learned. And I found something here, and I apologize, I haven't referenced the speaker. I'm going to try and find it before I share the slides. And here is the statement. It says it takes as little as 5 minutes to see changes, 24 hours to feel a difference, and 48 hours to become 2 times the speaker you were before. And you know what? I have tested this on myself. So when I started to get into leadership roles, and when I started realizing that organizations took for granted my technical abilities, right? So because I work in HR, at the level that I work now, people are expecting that I know HR. So they're not bothered too much about testing my technical abilities. What they want to know is how I'm able to communicate, because I'll be working with stakeholders. I'll be potentially representing the organization externally, and all of that. So how am I coming across? And so what I did was I started to do different things. There was an activity that I wanted to give people on this call, but I don't think that we've got time, so I wouldn't do it. We've got 15 minutes. One of the things that I did was to start doing videos of myself. And I'll do videos and I'll talk about any random thing that comes to my mind. I've got tons and tons of those videos. Sometimes I would imagine myself being the CEO of my organization, and I'll be talking about how I've just got millions of pounds of funding. Yes, I'm a dreamer like that. I will do that. Sometimes I think about being interviewed by, the CNN, Forbes, the rest of them. And I would literally no script and I'll talk about it. And I do 2 things. I listen to it and watch it without the audio, and just to see how my facial expression is coming across. And then I listen to it with the audio. And then I make notes as to how to, do it. And when I started doing it, I personally felt uncomfortable. I used to tell people that I hate watching myself, but I have changed because I enjoy watching myself talk. And, as part of this program, some of you saw the video that I did. Maybe 4 years ago, you wouldn't catch me doing things like that. But over the last few years, I have made a commitment to myself to be more visible and to be more comfortable with not just hearing myself and my voice, but also, seeing myself and how I was coming across. And if I didn't like myself, how the hell did I expect anybody to like me if I didn't like my voice? And so I started to do that. So I would encourage people to do that activity. Do a short video of yourself, pick any random topic. Now do a playback, listen to just the audio without the video. So just play it in the background, listen to it, and hear how you're coming across. Then listen to it or just watch the video, and then could combine both and take examples. Let me share my personal example as to or my personal story as to some of the things that I felt, and I'm sure a lot of you would resonate with this. I found that indeed some of the feedback I was getting about speaking too fast was actually true. And some of my words were inaudible because I just flew through the words like 59 million miles per hour, right? So my pacing was way, way, way too much. Another thing I found was I had a lot of filler words. The umming and ahhing, very, very, for me, disgusting. now. I mean, before it looked cool because I had heard a lot of people talking like that, and I felt, oh, they sound quite nice. And there was and there was something I was going to feed back to a group of people I had a call with. And so I got everybody to introduce themselves. And over 80% of that class had some kind of filler words that they were using. So again, when you do those videos, it's a reflection. You get to give yourself your own feedback. Forget what other people have told you. How are you coming across? And do you like how you're sounding? And one of the things that I found was the more filler words there, the less impactful your communication is. So I had to get that. And I learned that I had to be comfortable with pauses. So because I was so passionate about what I was talking about, or I was so nervous or anxious, I would feel the words because I was uncomfortable with not saying anything. But actually, to be a very impactful speaker, and if you hear about the people that you love how they speak and how they come across, they take pauses. Very similar to what I'm doing now, and I'm doing this on reflection. It's okay to be quiet for a few seconds. Your audience wants to listen to you, whether that is a presentation and all of that, as long as it's not too long that people are wondering where you are, take pauses. So I learned that. Another thing I learned was I wasn't very comfortable with my hands flying all over the place because I use my hands a lot. So I had to learn how to start using my hands in a way that made me feel comfortable. Another thing I did was when I am very prepared, not just intellectually, but physically in terms of my hair is done, makeup, whatever it is. I know for guys, you probably don't use makeup, whatever that is. It also enhanced my confidence as well. So I always try to be ready. And I tell myself, if I was called upon to give a speech, would I do it? And would I be happy to watch it in 5 or in 10 years' time? That was something else that I did. And also just the physical, dressing up part as well. So whether that's at work, you're going for interviews, it's important that I'm essentially saying it's a whole life course in itself. And like this quote says, it can take as little as 5 minutes for you to do a video, for you to review the video, do another take. And trust me, within a 48-hour period cumulatively, which can go over a week, 2 weeks, a year, your communication would be very, very different to what it was when you started that. I'll share another quick story. One of the things that I learned from I worked for a chief operations officer a long time ago, and I noticed that every time they had a board meeting, she always wore red. It could be a red suit, a red dress, something that had red or white, and her chair was always higher. So she adjusted her chair to be higher than everyone else's. Again, just to quickly drop it there, one of the skills that the World Economic Forum have listed to be their top 5 skills for 2025 and beyond is curiosity. I think it's number 5 or thereabout. It's curiosity. And it's so important because it's good for you to pay attention as to why things are done a certain way. So I noticed, her name is Aileen, fantastic manager I worked with. I noticed Aileen would always have a chair high. She would make her hair and all of that. And one day I took the courage and I said, why do you always lift your chair high? And she wears high heels on that day. And she says, Joy, I'm meeting with the board, including the CEO. She says, it makes me feel very comfortable when my chair is high. I feel like I'm elevated because I'm the only female, working in the midst of men. That is just, again, an example of somebody taking, paying attention or being self-aware on how they are and how they present themselves, especially in her position. She was quite senior, but it really doesn't matter. Regardless of where you are, how you are coming across is really, really important, okay? I'll take a quick pause there and just ask, what is going to be your own action, knowing that you can change? What is going to be your own action? I've shared mine with you. Does anyone want to share something similar they have done or something that you're looking to do? Let's chat in the comment section. Let me hear from you. I'm waiting for people to type. This is your opportunity. Imagine you're imagine that I'm the CEO of a massive organization and this is our town hall, and I'm trying to see who I'm promoting next. So who's going to write something in the chat? What is going to be the action that you would take? And I have shared mine. Okay. I try to listen to other people speak, especially in board meeting. Fantastic, Tommy. Yes, yes. That's something else I was going to share actually around mirroring people. If you find a somebody who a good speaker in the workplace or any other place, it could be YouTube, university, whatever it is, it's important that you kind of look at them and you know, pay attention to some of the way that they speak and see how you can learn. I've done that a lot, just knowing that, oh, that person seems to get a lot of, you know, feedback, they get a lot of attention and when they speak. And so I would mirror them and see how, you know, I could, you know, infuse some of those learnings from mine. I will be camera ready regardless of the type of meeting. Absolutely. It's so important to do that. It's always ready. And I think it's also a good habit to have. I remember I used to work for a CEO and you know, he came to my house one time and he says, Joy, I can't believe, I used to think that when I see you turn up to meetings that you were just doing it. I didn't realize like you get up and dress up. I am ready by 8 o'clock. Sometimes my kids ask me, Mom, are you going into the office? I am going to the office downstairs, but I'm ready because you just don't know how the day would be and you want to be ready to put your best self. My action today, so Tommy also says her action today is do more videos and listen back without the audio. Absolutely. And Olaide talks about pacing her speech and pausing more when speaking. It's initially hard, but trust me, it works. And Ade says, I'll take notes and nod my head to reaffirm that I am following. Now, really important part, and I love that you put that comment. Somebody recently told me that they got a feedback at work saying they are always nodding and they are not sure whether they're in agreement or not, but they always seem to nod. Very interesting feedback. So Ade, I'll be very careful as to what that means and how that is potentially coming across in the workplace, right? Because what if you are not agreeing, right, about, you know, what if you don't agree with what you are being told? So I think is, again, the perception is really funny, you know, human behavior, because some people see it and just think they are nodding because, is it because they are hearing me or is it because they are agreeing with me? So I think it's a very, very thin line. So I would say, yes, I think if you do genuinely agree, I think absolute not, again, to reaffirm that you're following, you're understanding, but be very careful, especially when you're disagreeing, and let it not become a part and parcel of kind of how you work, but really good action point. And Omoja says, practice not using filler words when presenting. Absolutely. No, we should exclude that. And Kay says, I would always dress smart and appropriate no matter the season. This has been complemented in a positive manner. Absolutely. And Kay, I know you really well. I know you dress, you know, so keep that up. Yeah, okay. And then to prepare well, to come across in a confident manner. Absolutely. Feedback. So Tommy said feedback she got was my stern look at meetings that consciously keep a smile. Yes, I was going to say, pay attention to your strengths as well when communicating. So I know that I've got a really good smile. And so when I'm talking, I try to keep a bit of a smile on my face. Not like, you know, my whole face is smiling, but I try to do that because I believe that there's a certain charm that comes with a smile and a relaxed face. And it tends to get your audience to want to listen to you more, okay? So what are the strategies for improving your communication? I'm going to rush this in hopefully 5 minutes. One, your tone of voice. And I'm going to talk about what tone of voice is, but we've talked about it during this class. So your tone of voice includes things like your pace, the quality of your voice, the way your voice sounds. Tone of voice is really important. I encourage people to go and read what tone of voice is. I remember somebody telling me that they work in consulting, and every time they had a big bid, I'm talking millions of pounds, they always had a voice coach that came to teach them how to sound, how to present. That's to show you how important it is, you know, that how important communication is in life. You know, for that bid, you just don't go the way that you are. There's a way that you sound. There are words that you use. There is a way you poise, your position, your posture. all of those sorts of things. Practice, practice, practice. I can't stress this enough, whether it's your videos you're doing, whether it's audio, whether it's all of that, make sure you do it. Mirror or get mentored. So I think Tommy talked about, liking the way that, some people do present. I think that's also a very good strategy to mirror and get mentored or get mentored by other people. Ask for feedback, right? Storytelling, I can't stress how important this is. Over the last few years, I've become very comfortable in sharing my stories. I always advise people to have a kind of a number of stories that you repeat all the time, because they are quite powerful. And I'll talk about two things just before we go. Make sure that you speak up when you need to speak up in meetings that matter. You don't want to speak up in every meeting, because sometimes there are some meetings that is just a listening, but when it's a meeting where your ideas can potentially be valued, make sure you speak up. The CEO of my organization was recently, this week, was giving an update on the, financials of the organization and all of that. Very, very, interesting meeting. It was quite nice to hear in a town hall, and the CEO was talking, and somebody in that call, in the room, because I was attending virtually, raised their hand to ask a question. And the CEO said, wow, I don't know, I'm just going to call a random name. Oh, wow, Neeraj, it's really interesting that you're not asking hard questions today, because I'm always looking forward to your questions. And I thought, could my CEO say that about me? Absolutely not, because I've not asked any question, right? So he doesn't know who the hell I am out of 20,000 people, but he knows Neeraj because Neeraj is always asking questions. So some of the things that you can do is prepare ahead for questions that you want to ask and all of that, because people are paying attention. Use AI to articulate written or sometimes even, verbal communication. So ChatGPT is a really, really powerful tool. You can draft, your text. I can't remember who it was that said they are always challenged for how, I think it was Abby, how strong, they are or how formal their communication is. So you can soften that up with AI and get AI to rejig it for you. And then, of course, you humanize it back by kind of, tweaking it the way that feels comfortable and authentic to you. So you could use all of that as well. Let me go back to the chat before we go final. Can I provide a link for radio and tone of voice? Absolutely. Put myself out. So Tinu says she'll put herself out there more, show off the effort and value I'm putting at work. Absolutely. And Ibuku says, listen more to great speakers and learn the tricks. Yes, on a daily basis. If you like a speaker, they like the way that they sound, why not do it? And I wanted to talk about the tone of voice and storytelling. So I've talked about tone of voice. It's just simply the way that you speak, just the way that you're listening to me speak. And it's a very critical part of communication. It's made up of several factors like the volume, the pace, the pitch, and inflection, right? So talk about volume. You would have heard at different points, depending on what I'm trying to stress, I'm either going very loud or very, soft and all of that. Sometimes you go very fast and all of that, and you use your hand, all of those sorts of things. And then the pitch and the pace. I had challenges with pace because I would run through things like I was going 100 miles per hour, whereas my audience weren't that fast in catching on. So again, I'm going to put a link here. Please drop your email if you want a slide deck, and we would ensure we send it to you. Can someone, Olaide, please help me collate all of the emails so that we don't miss anybody. The second powerful tool is storytelling. I can't reinforce how powerful this is. I was sharing with Olaide on the call how I was interviewing with a CEO recently, and she was asking me a question, and the question was, so Joy, can you tell me a feedback you have gotten in the past? And because I had gone through rounds and rounds of interviews, I just genuinely couldn't think of another example. So guess what I did? I said, is it okay if I use an example with my relationship with my husband? And she says, of course. And so I shared this example about my husband, and she says, fantastic, I love it. And she laughed out so loud. And guess what? I got an offer. I'm just trying to tell you how storytelling is so powerful. And something I found that was really, really interesting that should make you want to take storytelling important or seriously is Stories are remembered up to 22 times more than facts alone. And this is a Stanford University professor, Jennifer Ecker, who said that. I think it's so powerful to have stories in your toolbox that you use and you have crafted them, have a beginning, a middle, and end. At the end of the day, it fits the context in which you're using it. Really, really powerful. So get comfortable in sharing your personal stories and all of that. Olaide introduced me as Lady Joy. There are a few people that know the history of how I became Lady Joy because I've shared the story over and over again. And it's a true story, by the way. No time to share it tonight. If you want, you have to make sure you join the next class. And when data and stories are used in communication, audiences are moved both intellectually and emotionally. So you're engaging the right brain guys and the left brain guys at the same time. So even at work, when you're trying to share data, you want to make sure that you capture a wide audience. And so those who like intellectual stuff and those who like the emotional, mushy, soft stuff, they get to benefit from your presentation. Okay. So we have come to the end of the presentation. Let's see. I want to hear, first of all, if people have any questions. Olaide, I don't know how much time we've got, maybe 5 minutes. But more importantly, I want to know what actions people are going to take today. Okay.
Okay, our time is fast spent. We'll just indulge us. We can take about 5 minutes for 2 questions. If you have any questions, please drop in the chat or mute and speak.
Does anyone have? So Ade is asking, what can you say about sitting posture? Very important. I find that sitting on a high chair is really important for me personally. So I went for an event on Saturday and I was speaking, and there was no podium, there was nothing. So people were just randomly standing. And I remember moving to one of the organizers and said, can you ask the hotel if they've got a high chair? And they got a high chair for me, and it was so lovely because it's the high chair matched the color of the dress I was wearing. So it was purple. So I was like, I was winning. And I just share that to say, because you know yourself so much, right? Don't be afraid to ask for what makes you feel comfortable. I needed a high chair. And guess what? Every speaker since then wanted to sit on that chair. So I would say, do what makes you feel comfortable. Some people feel comfortable standing. If you work from home, you can buy an adjustable table that makes you stand. I do that sometimes. Some interviews kind of want to feel like, do you know what? I want to stand today and feel like a teacher. Please do it and own what your style. Own your style as long as it makes you feel comfortable. Okay. Right.
Thank you for that.
So what Continue is asking. Yeah, go ahead.
Please, what can I do if I feel my ideas have been dismissed in meetings?
Fantastic. If your ideas are being dismissed in meeting, I think the first thing to do is to understand why. Why is it? Is it because the idea doesn't make sense? Is it because they are not ready? Could it be just the way that you have presented it, right? So once you get the feedback, then you can improve. So here's 3 things I would say. If the idea is just not working, I would say it's important for you to work on how you're communicating your ideas. So, depending on what the context is, and I've been in such situations where it's like, sorry, Joy, it's not working. And so sometimes I have found that maybe the information is just too much. It's not clear and crisp enough. If you're talking to some kind of audience, they just want to know, what are the top three things that you're trying to tell us here? What is the impact? Why are we doing it? So there is a tool called Real Winworth. And it's really, really powerful tool. Is it real? So is it a real problem you're trying to solve in terms of the idea? And if it's a real one, is it, can we win in terms of, do we even have the resources? And have you done some work around the resources? And if you have, and it's a yes, is it worth it? Some things are real. They are worth, you can win in terms of you have the ability, resources, and time to deliver, but they are not worth it. And sometimes the organization may just take that stance, and organizations are making a business decision. So if it could maybe real, but not worth it, they would not bother. So I would say, look at that tool. It's called Real Winworth. It's a Stanford. I like Stanford University a lot, but anyway, use that tool. It's so, so powerful. I use that a lot, and I use it to challenge my team. And I said, well, where is this problem from? What's the scope of the problem? Is it just one person's problem or 10 people? So I would do that. And then the other thing is, if they are, for some reason, if it has to do with your communication, then master the art. Like we said, you can use a story to present a compelling business case as to why you have to do this, you know, and all of that. But I would say, Tommy, ask for feedback. You know, I've presented this, I believe is a real problem. Why is this not, you know, working? And your feedback would then enable you to hopefully come up with some interventions to win at the next, you know, idea that you're trying to present. Okay.
Thank you so much, Lady Joy. Thank you so much. Someone says this is really insightful. I think that was Kay. I'm sure he knows you already, but he believes this one is yet another. You know, thank you so much, Lady Joy. That was really insightful. My excitement is allowing me to go. Oh yeah, go on. But I remember what you said. I'll just pace. I'll just pace my speech and talk. You know, in a very comfortable pace. Thank you so much for all the insights